Welcome to the Frilly Knit Scrunchie tutorial. I think this is so cute, especially over buns with this bow detail that wraps the ruffles all the way around. I'm using mohair to make mine, which just creates such a fluffy little scrunchie. This pattern was originally published in the Q2 2024 issue of Material Girls, which is a free fiber art magazine that you can download at the link in the description. There are a bunch of other patterns in there, including other knit hair accessories, sewing patterns, some crochet patterns, designer interviews, fiber art games, all sorts of fun, so make sure to check that out. To make this, you'll need one or more colors of lace weight yarn. This is size 0 yarn. I'm using mohair and a pair of 5mm knitting needles. We're going to be holding yarn double throughout the entire pattern, so I wound up a separate ball out of my one ball of yarn so that I can pull off of two and hold two strands together. This will make things nice and fluffy. We're going to start with a basic slip knot and then insert our needle into that to begin making the bow piece first. I'm going to show you two different ways to make the ties that are going to create the bow. So the first one is to create an I-cord. So what I'm doing here is casting on, using a basic long tail cast on, 2 to 5 stitches depending on how thick you want yours to be. And then we're going to do a basic knit stitch across the round. But when you get to the end, instead of turning your work around, just slide it to the end of your needle again, like this, and we're going to do another knit round. So as you start doing this, you'll see that your yarn from the end of the row stretches to the front, and this is going to create a tubular shape. As you're doing this, make sure that you're holding your yarn and tugging it nice and tight so that there isn't a long strand between the back and the front of your tube. You want to pull it all the way to the front so that it really forms that cylinder. Continue until your I-cord measures about 45 inches long, and then you can cast off just like normal and weave in any ends. Now, I don't actually love the I-cord method. I just wanted to show it, but what I did for mine was crocheting some chains. I'm using a crochet hook that's similar in size to the needles I was using. Again, holding my yarn double and starting with a basic slip knot. If you haven't crocheted before, all you have to do a chain is pull some yarn over. It's very simple. So adding it to my crochet hook, then I'm going to yarn over and pull that through the loop on my chain, just like that over and over again. This is why I love it. It's such an easy and fast way to get quite a bit of length going. So over and over again, I'm just pulling yarn over and through the loops. You can see how quickly this is building up. And I'm going to keep going until my chain measures about 45 inches. All you have to do to finish off a chain is pull up a loop, cut your yarn, and then pull it up through that loop to tie things off. Now I'm going to make multiple chains and braid them together to make them a little bit thicker, since one chain of mohair is just pretty thin and I like the thick look. So here I've done 3 chains that are all about 45 inches, and I'm going to take all of their ends and just knot them together. We'll weave them in later. I know this looks kind of like messy, but I'm just knotting them all together until I feel like they're all secure from a good starting place, and doing a basic braid, pulling things from the right and the left over the middle piece to make this nice thick mohair tie. When I got to the end, I just again knotted all of the pieces together, going back and forth until I felt like they were all secure, then grabbed a tapestry needle and I'm going to weave these ends back up into the chain to hide everything. And I think this turned out really cute and definitely went way faster than doing an I-cord. Here's what my finished braided chain looks like. I think this turned out really well. I love the texture of it actually. Now we're going to begin working on the scrunchie part. So grab a new color if you want, and we're going to insert our hook into a basic slip knot and then long tail cast on 35 stitches. Again, we're going to be using yarn doubled throughout the entire pattern, so I'm making sure that as I cast on, I go underneath both strands of yarn, and this is what they look like all lined up, 35 stitches. For our first row, we're going to do a basic knit stitch all the way across the row, so just going in from the left to the right, pulling some yarn through, and then off the hook all the way across the row. Turn it all around, and we're going to do basic purl stitches across the entire next row. So going in with our needle from the right to the left, wrapping yarn around, pulling it back through the loop, and then pulling the loop off. We're going to do this all the way across the row and continue alternating between knit and purl rows like this for a total of 10 rows. This is stockinette stitch. These 10 rows of knitting are going to create a tube that we put the tie for the bow inside. So if you're changing colors to make the frill of your scrunchie, you can cut your yarn here, then grab the piece that you made for the tie, and we're going to lay it across this knit piece like this. Make sure that the middle of your piece is somewhat in the middle here so that the ties that come out either side are pretty even, and then we're going to fold the long edges over to touch. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky or just finicky. It's not that hard, but it just like is a lot to hold in your hands at once. We're going to knit 2 stitches together so that we connect both sides here. So I'm starting with a new piece of yarn, again holding the yarn double, and then to knit 2 together, going to insert into the first stitch just like you're going to knit it, and then find the corresponding area in the cast on and go underneath that stitch as well. Then from there, it's just like a basic knit stitch, wrapping the yarn around and then pulling it back through both of those loops and off. So I'll show that again here. I'm going to go into the first stitch and then back through the corresponding cast on stitch, and then that's when I will wrap my yarn around and basically do a knit stitch that pulls this yarn back through both the cast on and the stitch on our needles. As you keep going, you'll see that this connects them really nicely, and it's a super easy way once you get a hang of it to do this without seaming anything and then continue on with your knitting. This was one of my favorite knitting techniques. When I first learned how to do it, I just felt so sleek and talented, and like this was such a seamless way to go about things. So as you keep going, you'll see that we have some pieces connected here, about half of the scrunchie, and then the tie is just coming out. We've created a tube for it to rest in, and that's going to keep it there nice and secure. So keep doing this across the entire row, knitting through both sides until you've created an entire loop. For the next row, we're going to start creating the frills. So turn things around, and it's actually just a basic purl row first. So again, purl stitches across the entire row. On row 2 of making the frill is when we're going to pretty heavily increase stitches so that things will start ruffling up. We're going to do this through the knit front back method. So insert your needle as if to knit. You're going to wrap your yarn around and pull it back through, but instead of pulling this stitch off, you're going to take your needle to the back of your stitch and insert it through again, wrap around again, and pull through another stitch, and then we can pull it all off the needle. Basically, this makes 2 knit stitches out of 1. So again, we're going through the front. Don't pull off your stitch, go through the back and pull that stitch off. This is going to completely double up our stitches, which makes it nice and ruffly very quickly. We're going to do this knit front back method through every stitch on the row. This increase method is often notated in patterns as KFB, knit front back, and when you get to the end of the row here, you will have doubled all of your stitches and have a ton more to work with for the next row. We're going to turn things around and do another basic purl row. So grabbing your needle and then going through each stitch, we're going to do a basic purl stitch, and you'll have double as many stitches to do this on this time. When you get to the end of the row, turn it around and we're going to do another row of knitting front and back. So doing this increase method again across the entire row, we'll double the stitches yet again, making this nice and big and ruffly. Now it's time for a bit of a funky cast off method. So begin by purling the first 2 stitches, then just like a basic cast off, we're going to pass that right stitch over the left stitch to cast it off. Now we're going to start a different pattern. So yarn over, and then pass the right stitch over that yarn, purl the next stitch, and pass the right stitch over the left one. This is a way that we can like cast off while also increasing, and this is going to make a nice end to our ruffle. So we're going to do this pattern over and over throughout the round, yarning over, then casting off, purling, casting off. Repeat those steps over and over across the row, and this is when you'll see things really start to ruffle up. I find this so satisfying watching it just scrunch as you cast everything off, and I love how wavy this gets because we've increased so much. At the end, you can cut your yarn, pull it through the loop to finish things off, and then just grab a tapestry needle to weave in any ends that you have throughout the scrunchie. If you're interested in finding some more fun, free, girly knitting tutorials like this, head to materialgirls.com to the knitting section. We've got a bunch of free patterns there, and they all came out in an issue of the magazine, so you can also read the Fiber Art magazine, download it all for free, and just check it out and have a bunch of fun. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Can't wait to see your finished pieces.